I just remember Zac Efron was saying how to decompress he goes out and camps for a weekend. But there's a lot something to that. If even an actor who's insanely successful could literally do whatever he wants. He talk about F you money, he's got it.
Yeah.
He chooses to go out camping and just disconnect. And so having that experience here, just makes me again think about our existence as human species, how most of our lives were spent out in nature until obviously we kept advancing, and then to where we're at now, to where only 1.5% of the population's in agriculture. Most have no idea how to grow their own food. Most have no idea the process, like how long it takes. Because I continue to reiterate this story on Twitter. Earlier this year, there's someone that posted that she bought potatoes to grow and she was expecting it to be ready to eat the next day. It had 300,000 likes. I started reading all the comments. There's comments on like blueberry bushes. I didn't know that took years. And so I'm just thinking that's literally where we're at as a society, which is why I also joke we live in a soy society. But it's just crazy. That's where we're at now. To where now there's some people, I've seen videos to where they genuinely believe food comes from a grocery store.
Yeah, chocolate milk comes from brown cows, and regular milk comes from white cows, and yeah.
So that's just as cool with the Airbnbs. I know it could be all over and you don't know what to expect, but I'm just curious to, have you had any people that, I know you've had repeat with Airbnbs, have they become actual customers with beef and all that?
Totally have.
That's so cool.
And as a matter of fact, some of them have come out and stayed in our sheep camp so they could eat our meat as a tester while they were here, and then put in the order and the deposit before they left.
That's so cool.
It is so cool, right? And I mean, because ranching is hard. Mother Nature is a cruel, cruel mistress, right? I mean, she gives you reality checks just when you think, oh, I got it figured out and blah, blah. And then whatever happens, right?
Well, and that's going back to the context too. There's trade-offs, but like pretty much no matter where you're at, there's going to be some type of weather element that will really affect you as a farmer or rancher.
Totally. Yeah, and just kick your teeth in, right? Unapologetically. Like literally, I'm going to rug you and you're going to like it, right? And you're just like, what do I do now, right? But to have that kind of validation of what we're doing and people appreciating it and then willing to support us financially, I mean, that makes all the difference in the world.
So now, let's take it back then to the impetus behind Wrich Ranches. Did you grow up on a ranch or?
Did not. I grew up in town.
So then what led you to wanting to ranch?
Well, so my grandfather Martinez, so my mom's dad, had like old McDonald's farm. He was born and raised in the San Luis Valley of Colorado on a sheep ranch. And
you said McDonald's ranch?
Well, like old McDonald's farm. You know what I'm saying? Like
pigs
and chickens, all that stuff, right? Like the quintessential, when you're reading a children's book and you look at what a farm is it's got cows and pigs and sheep.
I forgot about the song because now I'm so used to just thinking of a McDonald's. Like,
yeah, right.
You worked for them?
Yeah. And so growing up, I spent a lot of time on their farm. And I was the only grandkid of 27 grandkids who was truly interested in agriculture, like learning more about it. And so he just imparted all of that knowledge on me. Like he taught me so many lessons about small business and also about farming the way that he did, because they didn't use any pharmaceuticals. Like he farmed the way that his dad did, other than the fact that he had a tractor and his dad farmed with a horse, a team of horses.
Yeah.
And so, teaching me about like how to look at the livestock and see if they look sick, and then like home remedies of what you can do to help them get better. And also how to pay attention to the land for what it needed. And I didn't think anything of it growing up because I wasn't going to farm, right? I wanted to go do big things. And
did you want to go like to a bigger city?
Not really. I'm a country kid. Living where we live, east is the mountains, west is the desert. this is where I belong. But I was planning on doing something bigger, whether it was go to college, get a degree, do something bigger.
Yeah.
And then, of course, because my folks, they were middle class, but we didn't qualify for any scholarships, so I joined the Marine Corps. And I was going to use the GI Bill and the Marine Corps College Fund to put myself through college, and then life happens. I married my high school sweetheart, who just so happens to have lived on a cattle ranch, which is where we are now. We're in my wife's family home, where we cohabitate with my mother-in-law, who still owns the ranch. She lives downstairs, full separate walkout basement, mother-in-law's suite, 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, full kitchen, everything. And then we live upstairs, my wife and I, and our now 18-year-old son. He just turned 18 last week, senior in high school. And so, I mean, talk about living the dream. Talk about approaching it with fresh eyes, all of the ranching. Because my in-laws moved here from Los Angeles, a suburb of Los Angeles, Whittier. And they purchased this place in the early 80s. And of course, this whole area was in a terrible, terrible downturn. So they paid pennies on the dollar for this place. And then as an afterthought, well, we should run it as a cattle ranch, right? Because it's a cattle ranch. That's what it is. And so they essentially started as a conventional cow-calf operation and struggled and scrimped and barely survived. My mother-in-law is a school teacher and then later a principal. My father-in-law cattle ranched, and then he also worked odd jobs as well just to survive their cattle enterprise.
Because that's interesting to think about for people, because now, I mean, a lot of consumers understand that right now it's tough for farmers and ranchers, but they might not realize in the 1980s, just hearing that to where mother-in-law had a job and then the father-in-law was ranching on top of another job just to make ends meet, essentially.
Totally.
What was it about that to where it was so tough? Like, or I guess, how can I phrase this? I guess what was the reasoning to where they were only getting by during then?
There was a couple of things. So number one, they were paying a mortgage on this ranch. They were paying a mortgage on this property. They had a payment to make on the cow herd, so they had a cow payment as well, and they're raising 3 young children. So if you just look at groceries, fuel, I mean, we're literally 20 minutes from town. So just fuel getting back and forth to school, let alone back and forth to the grocery store, which is another 15 minutes further than that. And the cattle market was super depressed. So not only was the national economy bad, the value of the commodity that you were selling, which was the weaned calves, was poor as well. And so it's literally like a break-even scenario at best. And so my wife and I met as sophomores in high school, and I immediately became another ranch hand because my wife is the oldest of the 3 girls. She was already a ranch hand. And so I came and helped and really fell in love with this property and saw a lot of the mistakes my father-in-law was making, but that's because he was farming exactly the way that like the land grant universities recommended that he do it. Heavy pharmaceuticals, heavy human intervention, calving in the winter where you had to handle frozen calves and deal with that. And it just didn't really work. So when my wife and I graduated high school, I joined the Marine Corps. My wife went to college. They sold the cow herd. Their free labor had went away. It was just more labor than they wanted to deal with. And so they sold the cows. And so when we moved back here after I got out of the Marine Corps, I helped on the ranch. There weren't any cattle, and they were actually leasing the ranch out to another cattle rancher. And I kind of witnessed kind of the degradation. The fence was getting in more disrepair. The irrigation systems were not being maintained properly. And I pitched to my in-laws, hey, can I lease the home place from you? Because I just don't think it's going in the right direction. And so they discouraged me from doing that because they'd had such a hard time making it work financially for them. And I'm like, I understand that, I respect that, but I'm going to do it a different way. Like I've been spending a ton of time researching other management techniques, other management practices, even if I'm just maintaining or improving infrastructure, irrigation, fencing, all of those stuff. It'll be better than the way it's going right now. So they finally agreed, and so I took over, and I was focusing on fixing fence, fixing irrigation, fixing ditches, and all of that stuff.
What year was this?
That would have been 2007. Yeah, 2007. Yeah. So it'll be 19 years this next year.
So you're only here for a year, and then you had your son.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And so,
Well, so back up. We didn't live here then.
okay.
We actually lived in town. I was working as a coal miner full time when I took over the lease of this place. So I actually farmed this place and worked full time. So I farmed full time and worked full time for over 10 years.
And then raising a kid.
And then on top of that, we had our kids because our daughter's 24 and our son just turned 18. And so,
How did you manage all that at that time?
same way I do now. You don't sleep much, right? Like literally, I was working the weekend shift at the coal mine and then working all week here, irrigating, haying, whatever. But when you love what you do, you're passionate about it, and you see the improvement, it's just motivating factor, right? Motivate. And then the coal mine job went away. The Obama's war on coal worked. We essentially got regulated out of business. And so my wife and I had to sit down, and she was like, what do you want to do? I said, I want a cattle ranch full time. So in the meantime, my wife had went to nursing school. She was working as a registered nurse. And she says, okay, I'll go to work full time as a registered nurse if you can commit to cattle ranching full time. And so that was it. The problem with all of that is we'd had 2 really good years of snowpack and irrigation water, so it was easy, right? The forage that we had raised, the hay that we had raised, for the number of cattle that I wanted to run, wouldn't have been any big deal.
Whenever you say a good year, is it based on the amount of snow then melts to rain, or is it based off of what you see produced from being able to irrigate and then see just from observational science, or how do you gauge whenever you say it's a good year?
All of the above. So it's based on how much snowfall we had, and it stays in the mountains until July when
Yeah.
it finally melts off, right? So we'd had good snowpack and good runoff, because that's the other thing too, is you could have good snowpack, but if it comes off really fast and it overwhelms the head gate of our canal out of the creek, the head gate can only take so much. The rest of it spills over and runs right into the Black Canyon. So there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
And so the other thing is the amount of forage, the amount of hay that we had raised was so much that I'd sold a bunch of it, because the quality of hay that we raise here at 7,000 feet elevation it's super intense, very nutrient dense, super palatable, high protein, high energy. So it's perfect for finishing beef cattle or high performance horses or goat dairies, or beef dairies. And so those people is who was buying this hay and paying a premium for it.
Do you just cold call people, or how do you go about whenever needing to sell that?
Most of them were calling me.
Really?
Yeah, because
Well, how do they find you then?
word of mouth.
Yeah.
Like I would have sold some hay to their horsey neighbor, and they'd look at this hay and be like, "Oh my God, where did you get that hay?" And they're like, "Hey, this is our hay dealer." You know.
Yeah.
And so they would call me, and if I had any available, I'd sell it. If I didn't, I didn't. No big deal.
That's the interesting thing about the agriculture world too. It's very aggressive in a lot of ways in that. We've kind of lost that way too. It's most people, because I've guilty as charged doing this too. It's even like texting people, "Are you free to talk right now?" rather than just
Call them.
calling.
Yeah.
And so that's why it's super old school, and I love that. we've really lost that in a lot of ways.
Well, and that's what's interesting. Like with our son, he is very similar to me in personality. He's very outspoken. He's very respectful, but also forceful. And so that's because we raised him to be that way.
Yeah.
He's traveled around with me as I'm doing speaking engagements, and he sees if you know what you're talking about and you're passionate, there's nothing holding you back from communicating that. And that's the thing that I'm constantly reminded from people that meet him are like, oh my gosh, your son is so respectful and so well spoken and so smart, so educated, whatever. And he's also a leader, right? He's a natural born leader.
Yeah.
And so that's the other thing too, is I'm proud of him for that, but I also understand the struggles that he's going to have.
Yeah.
Because that's not always politically correct. That we're in this what did you say,
Society.
society of like the soy boy,
Yes.
very feminine, right? And that's not him.
Right.
I mean, he's 6'3", 220, works out. He's playing football his senior year for the first year ever and just loving getting sacks and making tackles and, that very masculine thing, right?
Yeah.
And so it's preparing him for that because, I mean, he's actually being recruited by Vanderbilt. He's looking at going to, and so it's one of those things where it's like, going into that culture of that not being okay necessarily, giving him all the tools to be prepared for that.
Well, it's interesting you bring up football too. Just an aside, that's the one thing that America is compared to most is the sheer size of where we're at now because of our food system. So when you think of like Nebraska and Iowa, these huge, just farm-built, tough dudes, and then they go play football. But they grew up on farms, baling hay, doing all of that,
Totally.
and then obviously you're eating the American beef, and so yeah, I just had to add that because it's very interesting just reading stuff like that online because you don't see Nebraska Cornhusker just big dudes everywhere else around the world.
No, and that's just it. But that's also what we're finding with our daughters, right? Between the hormones and soy and what that has on girls, the effect on girls and their hormones, and also like birth control hormones. That's another, the pendulum has swung, right? So we're soy boying our boys and we're masculating our daughters, right? And that's the other thing that no one talks about. And you look at the processes of hyper processed foods and what that does to it, and then what that does to your body when you ingest it. And I mean, I have beef customers, one beef customer in particular that's here in Crawford. Her husband had over 50 seizures a year. She was on every anti-inflammatory medicine for everything, whether it was like mental disorders or leaky gut or irritable bowel and all of that stuff. 2.5 years ago when they moved here, they found me and through a mutual friend and started buying beef from us, eating almost solely our beef and other locally raised proteins. And last year, her husband only had one seizure. So you go from more than 50 a year to only having one, and just cut out processed foods and started eating real meat.
And it's medicine. Food is medicine.
Food is medicine. And it used to be medicine, and American consumers used to spend more money on food because of that, because they were healthier. They didn't need to spend money on medicine. Well, that didn't make pharmaceutical companies any money. So we had to figure out a way, of course, starting Rockefellers and then on, like how can we incorporate this industry, the oil industry, into pharmaceuticals and sell into it. And we see it every day, right? You go to the doctor, they're like, oh, you have inflammation, let me give you an anti-inflammatory.
Right.
Versus what are you eating? Processed sugars probably aren't good for you. Maybe you should do an elimination diet and start there. And so So, and I preach that to everybody I talk to, right? And there's some people that just buy meat from us because it's convenient, and that's great. I want to sell to those people as well. But many of our customers are looking for something they can't find somewhere else. They can't find in the grocery store, and they come out and they pet cows like we did earlier. They listen to the story. We walk through the cattle. I mean, some of them come here for the processing. When we do on-farm butchering, they want to come and be here when we kill the cow or steer or heifer that their family's going to eat. They want to be here. They want to see the life leave from the eyes of that animal, respect it. They want to be part of it.
Yeah.
And we can do that. We facilitate that. Because again, we're offering something that we all used to do. Unless you lived in a city back in the 1800s and you'd go to the local meat market and get it, you killed it and processed it yourself. And you hung it up in the well house or the cooler or the barn for the winter. You did it yourself.
You're way more familiar with the life death cycle and that's just never ending. And then now, again, you're so disconnected from your food. It's just out of sight, out of mind. And
well, it's like nursing homes, right? Everyone sends grandma to a nursing home to die and let someone else take care of her. Whereas all of our elderly relatives died at home with us taking care of them, because that's part of that life death cycle as well. And we want to respect our elders for everything they passed on to us, everything they've done for us, and not farm that off to someone else.
I agree. I know, I want to take it back to, you said 2007.
Yeah.
Is that whenever you started full time?
Nope. So I was farming full time and working full time. So it's 2015. Wow. Yeah, 2015 is when I started ranching full time.
How do you think you were able to get that from 2007 to 2015? What did you do in that meantime to where you were able to finally do this full time?
Nothing that was actually valuable. Everything that I thought I was doing was preparing me to be able to do it, like improving forage production, slowly building out, starting a small herd and then saving replacement heifers and building from there, like all of those things that I thought. But when we decided to go full time, I went and got a loan from the bank to be able to buy enough cows, to have enough calves, to make the income that I thought I needed to make to do it full time.
Yeah.
But the reality is that the dollar figure of income is not how you have to base your full-time ranching job. It has to be cash flow, because with more cattle, especially because we were raising them conventionally, we were raising
Whenever you were starting out?
when we were starting. We vaccinated everything. We were selling registered Angus bulls. We were keeping our own replacement heifers, but I wasn't marketing any beef. I was selling calves into the commercial system.
Was that something, because you were saying, going back to just your grandfather and just learning about other methods, did this go against what you were thinking deep down with what you were doing and were just trying to make ends meet before making a transition, or?
Well, it was part of it, but I spent a whole year researching breed associations, and I settled on Black Angus cattle because the work that Certified Angus Beef had done and the work that the American Angus Association had done, and then sitting in our local sale barn just seeing what cattle brought the most money. So the cattle that brought the most money were ones that had been vaccinated and ones that had black hide. And then selling registered Angus bulls, which is another value add. So let's say you market a steer and it's worth $1,500. You could sell a bull and it'd be worth $4,000. So that was my diversification ideas. I could sell steers into the conventional market. I could sell registered Angus bulls. And of course, we'd continue to keep our own heifers to build our herd. And with Grandpa's voice in the back of my mind the whole time, because there's a couple lessons. Number one, mijito, if you can't pay cash, you don't need it. Number 2, mijito, don't outgrow your bank account. Literally, like don't have debt to service bigger than you can pay. And number 3, do you really need that piece of equipment?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And had I paid closer attention to that little, voice in the back of my head, I would have done it differently. But because we were just simply looking at income numbers,
Right.
this is what we're going to do. Take out a big loan, buy a bunch more cows. The first year was great. We sold those calves, did really well. The very next year, drought. Drought to the point of we weren't sure we would have enough pasture, let alone we knew we weren't going to have enough hay. Like we may not even make any hay at all whatsoever. Mm-hmm. So at that point in time, we sold half the cows. Unfortunately, it wasn't enough to service the entirety of the debt, but it was enough to pay that year's debt payment and then buy enough hay to feed the other half. Jeez. And regroup, knowing, oh shit, what do we do now?
Right.
So that's actually when I started expanding my land base. I started saying, okay, we need to lease properties in other watersheds. So if we have a bad year on Fruitland Mesa, I can either raise hay or take cows to another watershed and at least have pasture. So that's when we started to really broaden out the land base that we were running on. And so over those next few years, it got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger to where we're kind of at the scope that we are now, that we're about 1,500 leased acres and 500 owned acres. So some of those pastures I'll graze once in an entire year and then give it an entire year rest.
Why is that?
Well, a couple of reasons why. Soil health is the biggest one. Many of these plants need to have a full lifetime cycle. So they need to go to full maturity, make seed, go back to dormant before they're impacted again.
Yeah, can you actually explain the cycle?
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, so plant physiology is plants, just like most animals, including humans, live for one thing, and that's reproduction. Like your whole reason for existence is to make whatever means it is that you're going to reproduce. So whether it's a seed or a fruit that has a seed in it, or like in animals, to mate and have offspring. So all of these plants are working just as quickly as they can to make a seed, and then once the seed is done, then they make leaves to make sugars that they then pull down into the roots and store till the timing and the conditions are right for them to start that cycle again. In conventional agriculture, and even in conventional cattle ranching, pastures get grazed at the same time every year.
Right.
Because for us, conventional cattlemen go to the mountains, go to Forest Service or BLM grazing allotments all summer. And then in the fall, they come back and they graze those pastures right to the dirt because there's nowhere else for them to go. If during the summer there was enough irrigation water that they were able to make hay on those pastures, they'll make hay, export all the nutrients and feed them in a feedlot, or sometimes spread them back out on the fields. Whereas many of the fields that we're on, and also the native grass pastures, so like the native type, the warm season grasses that grow in our pinyon and juniper forests, are looking at very specific times of years to do that. Some of them will do it in the heat of the summer. Some of them will do it first thing when it warms up in the spring, and some of them will do it when it cools down in the fall. That's how they do their whole life cycle. So if you graze those either continuously, like some people do, or specifically when that variety of grass or legume or forb, weed, whatever, is trying to grow, you stunt it back and it never gets the opportunity to put the sugars back in the roots and prepare for the next time. But that's also the way that we manage weeds. So if you have certain kinds of weeds that you're trying to knock down, we will graze them when those weeds are at their most rapidly reproducing time, their most rapidly growing time. Two reasons. Number one, they're the most nutritious for the cattle. And number two, we're going to stunt them because we're going to shut off their growth, shut off their photosynthesis to where they're really going to struggle to go to seed or to send out rhizomes or however they reproduce.
Right.
And if we do that multiple years in a row, we could actually nearly eradicate different kinds of weeds. And our cows are trained to eat everything because they're only in a pasture for a certain amount of time, except for now in the fall when things have gone fall dormant. We can graze them pretty hard, knowing that those pastures are going to have all winter to rest, all spring, and they won't be back on probably till next fall.
And then, is there any weeds or anything that would really make a cow sick or even kill them?
There are. So you have like world milkweed is one that will kill cattle. What it does is it actually binds to the red blood cells in their blood and doesn't allow them to uptake oxygen, and it also has it affects their brain. And so we have a lot of world milkweed around, but typically the cows, I don't know if it's the taste or if there's something about it that they won't choose to eat it unless that's all that's left for them to eat. And that's a lot of the weeds are like that. Larkspur, which is a beautiful purple flower that we'll have in the mountains, is also super deadly, but they have to eat enough quantity of it to kill them. It's another blood poisoning. And usually when you get into that is when that's the thing that's growing and choiciest, and the cows will eat it because the grass will be dry around it. So they typically will try and time turn out on the pastures that have that until after it's already went to flower, then went to seed, then it's not as poisonous. But those two, world milkweed and larkspur, are the two big killers in this part of the country.
I see. And then, okay, going back to, so you're saying with whenever you start out the conventional and we're looking at leased land, at that time versus compared to now, do you still look for the same things when trying to find a piece of land to lease, or has that changed over time?
Well, it has changed over time, and it's typically it comes down to what the landowner's preferences and focus is. Because of the way that we take care of land, I have landowners that actually pay me as like a land manager instead of me paying them for pasture. Because we do things differently, our impact is different, our timing is different, and our care, attention to detail is different. Many of them are absentee landowners, so they're looking for someone to utilize their irrigation water and keep the fences up. So they're paying me, like I'm the cabana boy, right? Like I keep a watch over the place. It's green when we have irrigation water, and it's adequately utilized when we're going to graze it or hay it or whatever we do. But I've also given up a lot of the smaller properties that didn't have good fence or that the landowners were difficult to deal with. Because anybody who would lease to me, I'd lease it. And so some of those I spent a bunch of time and a bunch of money fixing fence or putting in infrastructure like improving the irrigation, improving the stock water. Just because I'm like, well, that's how I'm going to have opportunity to be sustainable, is to have more properties to be on. What I'm finding is, unless it's adjacent to a property that I'm already leasing to where I can just open a gate and go from one to the next, it doesn't make sense to have to load all the cows in trailers and haul them across town just for a month's worth of grazing.
Right.
And also, a lot of our landowners are not ag, they have no ag experience. They don't understand the work of managing their property, the work of managing the cattle, and also the improvement to their land. And they're looking for a dollar figure. like, oh, well, the neighbor's leasing his place for XYZ. I'm like, okay, well, then contact whoever the cattle rancher is that they're working with, and you can lease your place to them too, because this is what it's worth to me. This is the actual dollars and cents of forage production, grazing, or hay production, and that's not counting for my labor. And I just have those real conversations with them. And if they can't see it, then it's not going to be a good fit. And if there's going to be a property that I'm going to invest a bunch of time and money into infrastructure, I do a minimum of a 5-year lease. That way I can get some payback on what I put into it.
Yeah. Because I was going to ask, whenever you approach people for leasing, and it sounds like just being full transparent and just trying to have that honest conversation, is there anything else that you would advise whenever for folks that might want to, look for leased land? How should they approach that?
That's a tough one, right? Because if I was approaching another landowner, then they have the power. They're the landowner, right? And they think of it like that, and they have a idea of the value in their mind. For me, it's shifted to the point where they're asking me to take care of their place because they see how well I take care of the neighbors. So like what I've been working on is trying to connect young, aggressive agrarian folks with old farmers and ranchers whose kids don't want anything to do with it. Because not only do you have the guy that owns the piece of property outright, he also has the experience of having ranched it or farmed it for sometimes 60, 70 years. So he knows where the wet spot is in the road that you don't want to get a tractor stuck. He knows where the irrigation infrastructure is. He has the dollars and cents of this is what we've produced on this place. And if you can combine that with the young, strong back and young, innovative mind of a new agrarian, and you can put them together, as long as they have the communication skills necessary to be able to say, communicate their wants and needs, it's a recipe for success. Because the old timer wants to see it continue to be farmed, right? That's their dream. They did like so many farmers and ranchers, and they exported the most important thing that comes off the ranch, and that's our children. We've exported all of that grit, all of that responsible, hardworking, intelligent, innovative kids off the farm. We've convinced them farming's not for you. You can't make any money doing it. Go get a degree, go start your own business, go do something else.
Well, then on top of that too, they're also exporting all the soil. And so, so whenever someone tries to come back, that's just one of the aspects that's made it's so challenging with agriculture because it's long term. Mm-hmm. And so whenever it takes you so many years to rebuild up something that just completely got destroyed, and that's to me is so sad about that in a lot of ways, is there's a lot of places that were third plus generations of family on a specific farm or ranch, and say they might have been conventional, but they're obviously not doing too great for the soil, and then over time they might end up just selling it out to, I don't know, it's very hard to keep it in the family, but also agriculture is just hard, but it's also very fulfilling, incredible. I will never see myself not in this for the rest of my life, and to me it's part of the human connection too.
And I totally agree. Like the piece of property that my grandfather bought, I think he paid $800 for it, and it was like 16 or 18 acres, and it had been farmed to death. But because he grew up where he did and knowing what he knew, he immediately started hauling biomass in. He got tomato skins from the tomato cannery. He got onion skins from the onion packing house. He would bring in moldy hay. He would bring in compost, whatever. And he just started working it into this land. Hardwood sawdust. I mean, you name it. Because it was so alkaline, because it had been overwatered so bad that it had saturated all the salts out of the soil to the surface. So it was white. And now it's a super productive hayfield.
I love that.
And so It can be done. And actually, it can be done faster than you would think if you're paying attention to what the F you're doing. And that's the thing for me is like, I'll go to a property that's just been completely neglected. Like it hasn't been irrigated, it hasn't been grazed, nothing. It'll have gray, oxidized grass 3 feet tall, right? Just a big fire hazard, literally like terrible, like the worst case scenario. And I'll approach the landowner. I'm like, hey, would you ever be comfortable with me grazing your weed patch? And they're like, well, we don't see any value in it. Why would you want to come graze it? And I'm like, well, it's 2 reasons. Number one, it's adjacent to a property that I already graze. So all the weeds that you're just letting propagate and the seed blow onto this property is killing me, right? Like I'm having to deal with that garbage. I shouldn't have to. Number 2, if I leave standing forage on this other ranch to graze later and we have a lightning strike and it lights your place on fire and it burns off all the standing forage on my property that I'm leasing, that's bad too, because I was banking on that grass being there. So if you let me graze it, I'll come in here with the cows and they'll eat what they want to eat and they'll incorporate the rest of that dry, dead, oxidized forage. The next year, it literally looks like a lawn or it looks like a golf course because that little baby grass that had been shaded out by that tall, dead, oxidized old grass was just waiting for the conditions to be right to grow, to regrow. And they will be like, oh my gosh, are you going to come graze our place again? You know, because they're excited about, number one, how good it looks. Number 2, me approaching them, offering my services. They just want me to come back. They don't want anything for it. It didn't cost them anything. And then the neighbors who'd been giving them a hard time about how bad it looks are like, oh my gosh, it looks so good. So I fixed their fence. The cows got some grazing. I improved the weed control. More acres for me to graze right next door to where I already am. I didn't have to put any new stock water infrastructure because I'm using the water infrastructure off the other ranch to service the cows while they're on that property. And so it perfectly works together. And everybody can do that. You just have to be able to like step out of your comfort zone and approach the neighbor and say, hey, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
And that's the hardest thing to do because we haven't taught our kids to be able to talk to adults. For my kids, from the time they were born, they were miniature adults. Literally, that's how we treated them. We took them everywhere with us. We told them how we expected them to act. Kids will be kids, throw a fit, tantrum, whatever, that's fine, right? They're having a bad day. Adults have a bad day too. But they learned that if you need something, you just have to learn how to communicate, right? And so that's how they've been brought up and that's how they are today.
And it's your responsibility too.
100%.
Because that's another thing too, is we've offloaded, as a soy society, we've offloaded all personal responsibility. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's always trying to blame everything but yourself a lot. I mean, it kind of goes back to why whenever out in the field I say the farmers are blamed it's always the farmers that are blamed. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so how often do you see a microprocessor have a huge beef recall for E. coli or salmonella? But these USDA inspected plants will have a recall for 1 million pounds of ground beef, right? That's USDA inspected. It should be safer. How can this happen? Oh my God, it's because just like anything else, as you expand the size, you expand the exposure. And when you're mixing different pieces of different carcasses all together and the human exposure as well, different employees, different people, your exposure just increases exponentially. Whereas in a custom processor, you might have 5 people work there, right? So if someone's sick, they stay home. Whereas in some of these facilities, you might have 300 people. And if one of them gets sick, they all get sick because they're just piled on top of each other.
Also from not even just an animal welfare, human welfare, because working as a human in a large slaughterhouse destroys you mentally.
Totally.
We are not meant to. I fully believe it's okay to take the life of an animal, but it is not okay if that is all you're doing is just that's you spend every day, and especially the larger they get, the louder probably is the who knows the actual quality and care of it is.
Well, they've done raids in some of those big processing facilities in Kansas, and they'll haul 300 people off that are here illegally. So they've been recruited by whoever the packing company is, brought in illegally, working, and then you look at their living conditions, like you'll have 25 people living in one single wide trailer.
Yeah,
So, half of them work the day shift, half of them work the night shift. So you're literally hot racking like you would in a submarine where, half of them sleep during the day, the other half sleep during the night, just crammed in just abhorrent living conditions.
yeah. The very large meat packers, they're sending animals to slaughter, but they're also sending their employees to slaughter.
Totally. Yeah, and that goes back to what I said earlier about like we need to have a microprocessor in every rural town.
And
We
then
really do.
so we can talk on that because I'm curious to hear just your thoughts on all of this. Because to me, do you do you think it's possible because it's so captured from that side to where having processors everywhere? I guess how do you see it as making that feasible?
Well, and so we've already spec'd out the business plan of building a microprocessor. So doing a modular microprocessing facility that can do 10 animals a week. Combining that with wild game processing. I mean, that's the advantage of living where we live. Like this time of year during regular hunting seasons, you have a ton of wild game processing happening as well.
Yeah.
All uses the same tools, knives and saws, packaging, all of that stuff is all the same. And we can actually cash flow that at 10 head a week, which is only 520 head a year of beef being set up to do goat, lambs, and pigs also. So, gutting cradles, all of that, scalders, all of that as well. And have 3 full-time employees and 3 part-time employees. And why you would do that is everyone would be cross-trained on every job. Everyone would know how to do everything from the kill floor all the way to final packaging. Because that's where you get in trouble in these big processing facilities is it's so specialized. Literally,
Yes.
you're on a chain and you're doing one cut.
Yeah, that's literally all you're doing.
One cut. Whereas it's actually it's an artisanal skill that everyone used to have,
Yeah.
right? Like we would have
When
our
you
local.
when you see the industrial boom in the butcher shops, that's all you'd yeah.
Totally. And now with the resurgence of a lot of these popular cuts, so these value added steaks like picanhas and Denvers and chuck eyes, you have to have someone who knows how to do that. How to take the loin roll and extract those steaks versus just one cut on a chain. And through the value add, that's where you capture some of your income to be able to pay those skilled butchers a living wage versus literally minimum wage, like they're a cog in a machine.
Yep.
And that also gives the pride of workmanship. So if you're learning this skill and you're an artisanal butcher, you have pride in your work and you approach it differently. The other thing with that is having the processing on farm. We could do just like the Harris family, and you literally walk into the back of the processing facility. They never have to get in a truck, and they leave in a package out the front end. And so your transportation costs are less, the stress is way less, and then we can compost all the offal and reincorporate it into the pastures.
Which you also mentioned off camera that can you explain? Is it the one that's local to where they toss it all out?
All of the local processing facilities all take it to the municipal dump.
Why is that?
The regulation in composting in the state of Colorado is tough.
I didn't even think about the regulation. So there's even just heavy over-regulation for composting?
Totally. Especially if you're going to use the compost to be spread on something for human consumption. There's a lot of leeway if you're just going to put it on farm fields that you're going to raise hay on, but if you're going to do compost that someone can use in their garden, there's a whole another set of regulations on it.
There's just regulation burden is just so heavy in America overall, but especially in agriculture.
It is, and part of that regulation is because synthetic fertilizer companies, so big oil and big gas, has the lobbying power to ensure that you're not using compost, that instead you're using man-made synthetic fertilizer.
Of course. That's what's so awful about regulations too, is who wins? The big guys. Who loses? Everyone else.
That's right. And everyone else, meaning your physical health,
Yes.
your mental health, as well as your environmental health.
Yeah. It
So
destroys
it's just
society.
lose. And it's just this downward grind to literally being the little blob on the flying thing in the cartoon Wall-E, being able to do nothing for yourself.
Well, and then now, where it stands, Brazil's going to be the top beef producer this year. We are a net importer of beef. Not the first year of that. A famine in this country is I'm not going to try to scare or anything, but that is a realistic thing that could happen. To never say that we could never have a famine in America in today's day is ignorant.
We have a famine every day in the city. If you look at what your food stamps money can buy, we're in a famine in the cities every day because they're buying soft drinks and potato chips with their food stamp dollars. So that's all farm bill funded to support farmers and ranchers, but that ultra processed food is actually what they're buying with a lot of your food stamp dollars. And that's a crime. That should be a crime. But if you look at who has the lobbying dollars, is Coca-Cola and all of the ultra processed food companies. And until we rewrite that program and the legislation behind it, I don't think we're going to get out of it, because that stuff is all engineered to be addictive. Mm-hmm. It's all about the scientists in the lab doing the mouth feel, the texture, the taste, the smell that's addicting, just like drugs, and formulating that to where you buy more and eat more and then look the way that you do if that's all you eat, which then feeds into the pharmaceutical industry, because then you're going to need all the drugs for your high blood pressure, hypertension, whatever, diabetes, you name it. And people, because like you said earlier, we've farmed out accountability. Like, I'm morbidly obese and I'm super unwell, but it's someone else's fault.
I mean, that's why our healthcare is so damn expensive.
It is.
Our country's, it's genuinely sad, but it also infuriates the hell out of me. Because I actually watched a video yesterday of a guy, I think it was in Florida. He was so large and to where they had to get a crane and take him out of the door to take him to the hospital. Who pays for all of that?
We do.
We do.
That's right.
And that's multiplied everywhere. And that's only getting worse. And like you said, Wall-E, that's very realistic. I mean, in a lot of ways, we're already there. Because I spent the NCAA basketball March Madness. They had the Final Four in San Antonio. And since I lived in Austin, I went there because I just wanted to go. And I had not gone to a sports game, I guess, in a long time. It was so eye-opening and jarring to where people couldn't even walk up the stairs. That was like the common thing, to where people were struggling to walk up the stairs, or they would walk up and then they had to stop to take a breath. And I'm just like, that is where we're at now. And it's very sad, but it's also, we don't look in and realize that it is our responsibility as humans. And to me, that goes back to our disconnection from our food. Because growing up, like you said, your kids, they are adults. You instill that responsibility into them, instill the freedom. Because now that's also, we've gaslighted ourselves to where we're not smart enough, we don't have freedom, so government help us. Or this entity come and save us. Because that's what I notice on Twitter all the time, is I will make posts, and then the immediate reaction is to tag Brooke Rollins to come save us.
Right. Well, and that's the thing for me. And we're farmers and ranchers who are out on the land are fit, because you can't climb on a horse and go ride in the mountains to gather cows and be morbidly obese. Because when you go to 10,000, 11,000 feet, you can't breathe, right? Gathering cows.
I'm struggling right now at 6,000.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too, is then you see Midwest farmers and ranchers that their farming is sitting in a combine, a tractor, or a semi. That's it. And they're having some of them have a hell of a time climbing into the cab because they're so morbidly obese.
And then they don't even eat anything that they produce.
Well, because they don't produce anything that humans can actually eat.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
And that's another one of the disconnects too, is like you get down this train of like, my government subsidized insurance will pay an insurance payment if I grow this, this, or this. And this is my 3 crop rotation. This, this, and this. And that's it. Where it used to be an 80-acre farm, they were all a diversified farm. They all had some chickens. They all had a milk cow. They all had some pigs. They all, right? So let's say you grew a surplus of X, whether it's corn, which was probably a regular hybrid corn, non-GMO, because that was before GMOs. And if the market was strong enough, you took it to the elevator and sold it to the elevator. If the market wasn't, you went to the sale barn, you bought a few calves, you brought them home, put them in your little 25 head feedlot and fed that corn that you ran through your own grinder mixer to feed to those calves, to put the gain on them, to then take them back to the sale barn to make your money. That's how they all worked. Like, that's how my grandpa farmed and my great grandpa farmed, because you hedged your bets no matter what you grew. It wasn't relying on subsidy because they didn't exist. Those insurance programs didn't exist then. Those all came in post 71 for the most part. So we go off the gold standard, and then we're going to do the Earl Butts farm fence row to fence row, and we're going to use food. We're going to use our surplus of food as a weapon against every other country, namely Russia at the time, because we could grow faster, grow bigger, grow more than them, suppress their export markets for their grain, and control the whole world population by how much grain we could grow. So what happened? All those small diversified farms went out of business because there was no bet to hedge, because the big guy next door was going to reduce the price of your corn to the point that you couldn't even make the difference up in feeding it to your calves in your feedlot. So they just folded up shop and went to work in town at the John Deere dealership or at the Ford factory or whatever. And as soon as you take that diversification and everyone gets super specialized, it becomes super unstable, because it only takes one little thing and it all starts to go under.
To me, you can expand that to humanity too. I'm not going to say specializations are bad, because it is actually good for discoveries. But to me, the worst advice ever that I had, and most society has, is never being the jack of all trades, master of none. I think that's complete bullshit. Because, again, going back to the 1800s, they had insane amount of skills. Going to today's society, you go to a farmer ranch, a lot of them are more than just a farmer rancher. They're carpenter, and I can just start naming all of them. And we've also lost that, in the sense that to where you live in town now, you call a guy for AC, you call a guy for the shingles, you call a guy for this, that, or the other. And
well, that's the thing for me, right? I'm an animal nutritionist. For me, it's pretty easy. Salt, mineral, water, grass. Don't need anything more than that. I am a veterinarian. You have a bull calf that has a rectal prolapse, I can push it back in and do a purse string stitch around their rectum to hold it in. Have a cow having a hard time having a calf, I can reach in there, reorient the calf, help the calf be born. I mean, it's on and on and on. Tractor gets a flat tire, I can take the tire apart, take the tube out, patch the hole, put a boot in the tire, put it back together. You know, it's every single thing. The tin roof blows off the calving barn, I can climb back up there and screw the tin back down. You know, and that's all of those things that it's not a specialized skill, but it's handy to know the basics of it.
Yeah, and that to me is part of the long-term demoralizing campaign against us from the powers that be is you go very specialized, but then also you are just in the system with going to pharma, and then it's just the revolving door. And then that's why I try to get people, again, to go visit a farm is to break free. It's to understand how we've been living is not, I'm not saying to not live in a city, but it's just how we've been living and how what we're told how we should live from the government, and then how they kind of mingle in all their other ways is not, it's unfulfilling. I mean, we're so miserable. That's why we're so unhealthy too. We are such a miserable bunch of people for a lot of different reasons. But to me, one way to change your perception and also think long term, but then also think about personal responsibility is, again, shake the hand that feeds you. I don't know. To me, it just snowballs from there.
Well, and that's so like selling us the American dream. What that meant is it was going to be good for the car manufacturers because everyone needs to have their own car. You know, the little house with a white picket fence, that means everybody's going to have a mortgage, which means everybody's going to have some sort of job. So,
and then also we've been led to maintaining that front lawn to where it's got to be pristine,
totally
anti-nature, and then there's no gardens. But
yeah. And so it's like, so let's look at who made let's live the American dream, the whole suburban sprawl, all of that stuff. It was the banks for a mortgage. It was the auto manufacturers for the car. It was the appliance manufacturers because everybody had to have a washer and a dryer and a microwave, and I mean on and on and on and on. And what I find to believe to be true for me, because of where I live and how I was raised, I can do without all of those things. Like the hang up would be for me is I have to have a truck big enough to haul my beef and deliver it to all of my customers. Other than that, I could hang out right here and I can walk the cows down the county road to the next pasture. That would be ideal for me. The other thing too is the snow gets deep enough that I have to have either enough hay or tall enough forage for the cows to be able to dig through the snow to find that forage and eat it. So then you have to have hay equipment or buy hay from someone else at a reasonable enough price. So I have to figure out a way to get it here. But other than that, I mean, I would love to go back to the wild, wild west, cattle on pasture all the time, literally until they were butchered, and then make the customers come and pick them up here. Because what happens with modern convenience, it takes away the tolerance for discomfort. So that's what happens. Humans are an organism who are always looking for comfort, right? We always want to be in this level of homeostasis, like everything's okay. So when it's cold, you turn the heat up or you go put a jacket on. When it's hot, you turn the air conditioner on. Whereas cattle ranchers, we ignore that most of the time. Like you open the window on your tractor that the air conditioning doesn't work and it's just enveloped with dust as you're making hay. Or me, like my swather is only 6 years younger than I am. It's a 1984 model, open platform. So as I'm cutting hay, all that pollen and hay dust is just rolling in my face, right? But that's just part of it, right? That's the dealing with the feel of discomfort and building resiliency based on that versus trying to modify Mother Nature to bend to our will. And that's the other thing that consumers don't realize, like strawberries don't grow year round. Peaches aren't harvested year round. Like so much stuff that you go to the store and buy, if you only ate in season for wherever you lived, your diet would look very, very different.
It's very challenging that's why I really sympathize with consumers in a lot of ways too, because then also take restaurants, for example, Cisco Foods. They are about to merge most likely with, I think, PFG. So we might only have two packers essentially to where they have control dominance over the food system and how they supply restaurants. And now restaurants, it's very challenging for them to ever try to support locally. Because from an economic standpoint, it doesn't make as much sense because Cisco, it's not even just food. It's all the packing materials. It's the napkins. They control it
Straws.
all.
Yep, yeah.
And they've also, if you look into their history, they have made, I think it's just hundreds and hundreds of acquisitions. So many to where they just did it under the table. And I mean, this goes to like fiat and a lot of other things, but it's just very hard too for the consumer to really understand any of this because it gets so convoluted, and then they go online, try to trust the influencers or government or other things that are, it's just so much information tossed at them. It's very hard from a consumer to understand. Again, this is also why I say the one way to break through all of that is visiting a farmer or rancher. To me, that is the only way. And to me, also the only other way our food system changes in the long run is from the people. Because as it's shown kind of the last year, if you apply pressure, it does work with the mods. There's this family in Cranberry, New Jersey. They've had this ranch, I believe, for 175 years that through eminent domain might be essentially stolen from them. And it would have probably already gone through had it not been from so much pressure applied from the people online, from Brooke Rollins. And the only reason why Brooke Rollins knew about that is from the people online. But then also, it takes so much work to push back because whoever you're pushing back to, they typically have a lot of manpower, a lot of power, a lot of money. And so they can just throw it into where whoever they're going after will eventually just cave because they don't have any more money or...
Yeah, they just wear you down.
Yeah.
It's a game of attrition.
But then this is why I say we are a miserable bunch, but America at its heart, it's because we're demoralized. That's why I'm saying we're a miserable bunch, is because we've been so demoralized. But what makes America so unique is that American spirit. It's kind of like the natural flowers and grasses, they're dormant and you just have to wait. That's how it is with American spirit too in a lot of ways.
Totally.
It's dormant. I'm kind of rambling with that, but that's why I'm trying to, because it's like gradually then suddenly in a lot of ways.
Well, and that's the beauty of what we're doing with our ranch stays. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like, people read our description: regenerative cattle ranch, blah 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 blah, on farm store. Come and experience. A working cattle ranch, all of that stuff. And disclaimer: ranch operations may be happening around you. Just be aware, so on and so forth. But I'm able to have that conversation with people I would never interact with ever.
Right.
And help explain like the importance of what we do and why we do it that way. And then of course, then they can leave here with some of our meat products, and make these lasting connections that I wouldn't have otherwise. And thank them for supporting us. And then they go home and they share their story that they had with other people. Like, hey, we actually met a cattle rancher who is doing it this way.
Right.
And this is his priority, and this is what he's trying to do, and this is what he focuses on. This is what his cattle look like. This is what the landscape looks like.
Yeah, showing videos and pictures of just the gorgeous scenery and everything.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then when they go back to wherever they came from, they're going to support someone that they find through the networks that I share with them about, hey, maybe there's someone close to us doing the same thing.
Yeah.
Totally, absolutely. So,
I want to transition a little bit to subsidies, because before we hit play on this too, you mentioned that there's subsidies for ranching too. And can you explain that? Because I've never heard of this.
well, it's not necessarily a subsidy.
But I guess it's like a...
But it totally looks like a subsidy from
Yeah.
a business model, right? And
Right.
so for us, we run on all privately owned land. And so when we're paying a pasture lease, we're paying between 50 cents a day and $1 a day for a grazing lease. If you're grazing on Bureau of Land Management or Forest Service, their current rate is $1.35 a month for grazing. So for us, we average about $27 a month per head for grazing. and they're paying $1.35. So if you look at that from a business standpoint, we're paying around $30,000 a year in grazing payments, lease payments, and a same-sized operation as ours would be paying $1,500 to $1,900 a year in leases. So just from a sheer dollar and cents perspective, that's a significant cost difference. Many of those people are also the price takers. Like they just sell their calves at an auction, and whatever they get is whatever they get, which is what drives us to try and capture as much of the value as we can. Whether it's direct to consumer finished beef, whether it is selling registered bulls, and also doing ranch consulting. Because as much land as we lease, I'm doing consulting and helping other landowners improve their land, both for wildlife habitat as well as for grazing. So those are other ways that we can use the skills that I've gleaned through my experience and the years that I have had doing what we do to try and supplement and make up the difference to pay those grazing fee differences. And one of the biggest pushbacks that I get from public land grazers is like, well, we're improving the forest, or we're improving the Bureau of Land Management land, or we're using something that wouldn't be utilized anyway. The problem is they have encounters with hikers and backpackers and four-wheel drive and ATV, and so they have these interactions that public will say, actually, you're destroying it, or actually, we don't want to have to step in cow pies, or whatever. And so there's that other public-private interaction on public land that they have to deal with that I don't, because my cows are where they're supposed to be most of the time. Because they're supposed to be there.
Yeah.
And so I don't have that public-private interaction problems that they do on public land.
Are there any other examples similar to that from like a financial standpoint that folks might not realize that impact you?
Well, I mean, like the current cattle market, my profit margin is actually greater if I just took all of my calves and sold them directly in the sale barn, because I haven't raised the price of our beef significantly to mirror the difference. Because in raising a beef, it's around 24 months from the time that it's born to the time that it's butchered. So you have a whole nother year of feed and a whole nother year of liability for it to get sick or hit by a car or eaten by a mountain lion or a wolf or whatever that you wouldn't have otherwise. Mm-hmm. And that's evidenced by, we had a few of our little kind of scraggly looking calves that just didn't fit the bunch that we looked at earlier. And I was like, I'm just going to dump them. The market's good. So I took them to the local auction house, and then I crunched the numbers, back in napkin math. And I was like, I'd be better off to just haul all the calves to the sale barn. But then I'd have those 200 plus beef customers that rely on me to buy beef from me that would just be without. And so they will still be with me no matter what the cattle market is. But realistically, I probably need to raise my prices again to be competitive, because I already have people who previously said that our beef was too expensive reach out to me about buying beef from us now because they're feeling it in the grocery store.
Yeah.
And as you know, in the grocery store, once the price goes up, it never goes back down. Like that's just the new normal. But so much of what we do is feeding our communities. Like that's such a focus for us that sure, we need to make the money to pay the bills, pay the mortgage, all the, whatever bills there are. But I see the positive effect that we have on the children that are eating our beef and how much better they're doing in school, how much better their attention is in school. And that's really what, drives me to continue to do what we're doing,
Yeah.
because you can see firsthand the positive impacts you have on these local families in our community.
And that sentiment I hear time and time again from farmers and ranchers, that it's so exhausting, and there's so many times, because I also hear like when something happens to where this might be it, I'm just going to hang up the towel, but then they hear something from a customer about a specific product or something, or a story about a family. You can't quantify that.
No, you can't.
It's priceless.
You're right. And that's like, I'm reading the reviews, because we have like a journal and like a book in all of our Airbnb units. And they'll write in there like, we grilled steaks from the farm store and it was the best steaks that we've ever had in our life. And we so look forward to coming back,
Yeah.
and grilling here and eating in the views, and, the deer and listening to the elk bugle and just all of those things is like, because sometimes at 1 o'clock in the morning, when you're scrubbing toilets and making beds for the next guests to check in, you're just like, why am I working so freaking hard?
Yeah.
And then you read one of those and you're like, well, that's why. Number one, it's a beautiful property that we're able to make work to expand our ranching operation. But also, I am being the change I want to see. I am being the guy who's facing, complete transparency, having these conversations. We've had people from Africa. We talk about farming in Africa. We talk about farming here. We've had people from India, who both husband and wife are from farming families in India, talking about the government owns all the land and all the water, and you have to apply to be able to use it. We've had people from the Middle East talking about racehorses and dairies in the Middle East that import almost all of their forage from the United States. So we have those real human interactions from all over the world.
That's got to be cool
our
too, when
guests.
going back to context too.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And of course they're like, you own all of this? Like, yeah, everything you can see here, we own.
See, this is why I love America. This is why it's so worth fighting for.
Totally.
Because it should, yeah, I will go down another long tangent on that. That's why I fight so hard for this too.
Mm-hmm.
It's, people have lost, because I think it's starting to the pendulum is starting to swing back, but a lot of people do not appreciate this country for what it is.
No, they don't. And I'll tell you what, talking to people from other countries that remind me that the mental illness that comes from a particular sect of our political beliefs, they're like, those people say those things because they've never lived in a communist country.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
They've never lived in a socialist company. They're saying these words, these useless, meaningless words, because they've never lived under a regime like I have in Russia, or I have
Go to
in
third world
Germany,
country.
or I have. And they're like, I would love to be an American. I would kill to be an American, because you guys have liberties that we don't when we go back to wherever it is that they're from.
And that's what I'm trying to get the consumers to wake up on, because the liberties are being stripped away in all of ag. And so what's going to happen is it's going to turn into India, to where they control everything. From the beginning to the end. They control it all, and they just want you eating with whatever they feel fit. And yeah, that's
And it's such a, we've been the frogs in the pot of water that they've been turning
Yes.
the heat up on for so long, right? And then through nutrition manipulation, by replacing real animal proteins with plant proteins in so many of our foods, and then seeing the emasculation of our young men, both physically by what we're feeding them, and then mentally and emotionally by what we're teaching them, they're much easier to pacify. I mean, we have generations of young men who struggle with mental illness because they don't know any difference. And then by convincing their moms that they're better off as a single mother versus working through relationships and having a strong father figure in their lives, they don't even know how to act otherwise. And that's the thing that I spend a lot of time mentoring young men and young women. Like they come out and work for me as ranch hands, as day laborers or whatever, right? And the first thing I want to hear from them is like their story so I can tailor my advice for them to like be the sometimes tough love.
Yep.
You know what I mean? When you're in a situation where you go spend, you know, sometimes with mom and sometimes with dad, and they're warring against each other with what they're trying to give you so you like them better, it is so terrible for you, right? Because then you have no accountability. And like a lot of these young men, they don't have any direction. They don't have any dreams. They don't have any goals. Like they're literally surviving today. So I want to like light the spark in them and like, well, let's look after high school. What would you like to do? What would be your dream job? Or what is your focus? Do you want to make the most money that you can? Do you want to be able to live and work in a city? Would you like to live and work on a farm? Like let's start doing things now, starting with making sure we have passing grades so we can graduate from high school.
Yeah.
Right? To get to wherever it is that you actually want to go. And from now till your senior year, it may change. It may be different, right? But I'm telling you, from 18 to 28, you're gonna have some crazy changes in your life.
Yes.
Right? Like you're gonna grow up so much. And then from 28 to 38, it's a whole different set of growing and challenges and whatnot. But let's build all of it based on a plan that we're making that we're gonna take accountability for and start doing things now. Let's learn the skills. Let's meet the people who are gonna help get us where we think we wanna go. And because they don't have that. I mean, because the school teacher's saying, go to college. Or it's saying, you're too dumb to go to college. Good luck, whatever, right?
Have you always been this way of just mentoring and wanting to help, or is there a certain breaking point to where like you just wanted to start doing this more? Because you've always, even just since I've known you, you've always been such a good communicator and educator, and you've had this deep down desire to help.
You know, that's a good question. I think, so for me personally, school was always super easy. For me personally, I was way different. I was a hard kid, right? Because I was bored with everything, right? And so what I realized is I needed more than what I had as far as mental stimulation and education. But that was hard for my folks to deal with, you know, so essentially they tried to beat a lot of that independence out of me. So it wasn't long after that, like even in through high school, I'm like, I have a skill and a knack that not many people around me have. And I used it to manipulate the system. Like I was a classic narcissist. Like I could get anybody to do anything that I wanted growing up. And I realized that very early on. Like, and I would use that to my advantage, whether it was with even when I was in the Marine Corps, like my supervisors, you know, that were way higher ranking than me, I could manipulate the system and convince them that I should be the guy who should get the day off. Or I, you know, I was the smartest guy and that I should be promoted before everyone else or whatever, right? And then, and it was in my relationships too. Like I could convince whatever friend, you know, to let me borrow their car or let me borrow their boat or let me do whatever, right? And that went on, you know, until I realized that I hadn't built any real relationships because it was all superficial manipulation, and that I could use that to help people. And so when I got out of the Marine Corps, moved back here, I flew up through the ranks in the coal mine because I could communicate on whatever level the workers were. I could communicate well with ownership, and I could communicate well with the brand new green hat miner trainee. And I could figure out what motivated them to get the most out of them that I ever could. So like I would inherit a mining crew that had been a problem, like the old style coal mine foreman who was like the yell and scream and iron fist and whatever, and these guys would just lay down because there's a lot of young guys, like the next generation of guys that didn't respond to that, right? Whereas like my dad's generation was like, screw you, I'm gonna prove to you that I can work harder or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And these guys were like, eh. You know?
Yeah.
So I would inherit these crews and I would figure out how to motivate them and like what was bothering them and all of that stuff through those skills. We would break records. We would be the safest because I was like, okay, I want everyone to go home with all your fingers and toes no matter what, because I care about you and your family and your future, right? And if you're broken, you're not good to anyone, let alone me. And then if we work together, we can cut more coal, more tons, put more roof bolts in. Like we can do this.
So do you think that changed from me to we? How you viewed because you were saying like you got what you wanted essentially growing up in Narcissus, but with this, did that change to like you were starting to think more?
Totally did, because then now I'm getting high praise and accolades for all of my skills. I'm like, oh, so it's not just about me. Like I'm imparting, and then I'm seeing these young men and women evolve into like the next best version of themselves.
Right.
Because they just needed someone to listen to them and get on their level and not force this nonsense down their throat and cultivate them. And then I see them going and getting their electrical certifications and their mine foreman papers, and then them being the next boss or the next fire boss or the next leader, next best mechanic, electrician, all of those things. And I was like, and that's because of me. Like I helped them realize in themselves what they could do to go to the next level.
Right.
And so anything that I'm passionate about, I want everyone to appreciate it too, on whatever level they're at.
Yeah.
Whether it's a consumer, whether they want to start their own direct-to-consumer business, whether they aspire to be a chef or whatever, I want to be like the conduit to connect them with the people that they need to connect with for them to get to the next level that they need to be.
Right.
Which is why I'm involved in so many local, state, and national organizations, whether it's on the boards of directors or in their education arms, because I want to be the conduit no matter what it is, whether it's ag, whether it's, Colorado River District, whether it's whatever, because there's so many people who want to do better, want to do more. They just need someone to like point them in the right direction.
Yeah. Man, how many hours of sleep do you think you get?
Not enough most of the time.
Because that's a lot.
It is a lot. Like we had a domestic water meeting last night that I was running the meeting because the president's on vacation. So you set up the agenda and you set up the Zoom link and you get together and you go through the meeting, all that stuff. And which I missed another meeting because it was at the same time, and so.
You've had to have burnout then, or no? No. Just keep.
The only burnout that I have is when I encounter shitty people that I trusted with something. Right. Like they came to me, hey, I need help with blah, blah, blah. I invest the time in them to be like, this is what you need to do. This is how you're going to get to the next level. Okay, yeah, I'm good to go, da, 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 da. And then they take that information and they go sell it. Not necessarily like for cash, but they sell my idea that I invested in them because I wanted to see them take it forward, and they spin it off somewhere else. And so then I hear through the ag telephone network, literally like this farm talks to the next farm, talks to the next farm, talks to the next farm. That's how that works. And then at the coffee shop in the morning, hey, did you hear so-and-so? And I'm like, that mother, yeah. So then I run into that person and they're all sheepish, like, and you're just like,
Yeah.
you're dead to me.
Yeah.
Just so you know, you're dead to me. Like, you came to me with help that I thought you needed, and I helped you, right? I put you in touch with the right guy and the right gal and the right program. You burned the bridge. We're done. And so really that's it. Because like with buying this new property and the amount of work that it took to clean it up, fix it up, and get started with a vacation rental part of it, and working through fine-tuning the systems, like even how we carry the laundry in and how we prioritize the laundry that we do later, and like what sheets and towels and how it's decorated, and make it easier to clean and more comfortable, all of that stuff. That evolutionary process is like being able to see it. Like we did all of this. Like most of the furniture we sourced from Habitat Restore in Glenwood, and it came from Aspen. So it's high-end, super nice stuff that we bought for half price because it was a 50% off sale. So it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Real leather couches and antique dining room table and like super nice. And to have such a positive review and positive experience with so many of our guests, like makes it all worthwhile. And making the mortgage payment and continuing to do improvements and expansions and also hosting like free to the public events so they can come see it. So it's like this community gathering place.
Yeah.
Which just completely aligns with everything else that we're trying to do.
It just seems like from doing everything you just described, all of the ranching, all of the other organizations you're doing, all the education you do online and in person, to me, why you're saying that with the sleep and everything, but you're still have never really been burnt out is just the fulfillment aspect, but then also the connectedness too, because that's one issue with farming and ranching is it's very siloed at times. There's a lot of reasons as to why the suicide rate is really poor, but isolation is one of them. But for you, you're essentially building a local community, but then also the digital community, trying to support local businesses, and it just, to me, that's what it means to be a human in a lot of ways.
Totally.
And why it is so fulfilling despite all of the work, exhaustion, lack of sleep, but the motor's just running. Is that correct?
It is, and so I'm 46, I'll be 47 next week. And I'm just barely hitting my stride. Like I was crushed in the coal mines, broke both of my legs. Surgeon said I may never walk again. My one ankle joint, it was just exploded. He's like, this will never heal right, on and on and on. I don't feel any pain in my joints.
Really?
In the summer when I'm
Even when
irrigating,
it's super cold, no stiffness or anything?
the cold, because I have a rod from the knee to my ankle and my left leg, the rod gets cold, so that will kind of like throb. But my self-amputated thumb actually causes more trouble than my legs. But in the summer when I'm irrigating, I'm regularly getting 20,000 steps a day. And so that kind of folds into all of it, right? Like if you're physically fit, you're working on something that's stimulating your mind, so you're mentally fit, and then you're able to share that with people who support you in whatever way, whether it's a pat on the back, whether it's a cup of coffee at the coffee shop, or even buying your products, or supporting your vacation rental, or the young couples that are getting married on our place. That is the level of fuel, and that's also the level of community that a very, I am a very social person, as evidence. Like I can talk to anybody about anything, and I can tailor my speech to where they're at, because most people don't want to be talked at. Most people are looking for someone to listen. And that's another weakness of mine, is I want to help everyone. And there's a lot of people that they can't help themselves.
Yeah.
And
Can't or don't want to either.
that's true. And the analogy that I say is like my daughter, when we were potty training her, she'd poop in her diaper and she didn't want you to change it, right?
Yeah.
And so those people who can't help themselves, it's their poopy diaper, they own it, and they don't want anyone to help them. Because that's literally a perfect analogy, right? So they're living in this stench. They're living in this mess, this uncomfortable mess, right? Mm-hmm. But that's how they are defined. That's how they define their lives. And they are unwilling to take it off, throw it away, get cleaned up, and move on. And me being so open to communicating, I feel that a lot of times. And that'll be one of those things where you're just like, oh my gosh, that person is in a place that they may never recover from.
Yeah.
Like they have to make the step to get out of it. Whereas other people, I'm like, hey, how are things going? And you can tell they're not. And they're just like, oh, actually, da-da-da-da-da. So you being there for the 5 minutes that they need to just like decompress and unload, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then just wrap them in a big, strong embrace. And then you see them like a week later and they're a completely different person. Like you were the person who was strong enough to hold that burden for them in the moment.
Right.
For them to like get over the hump and get to the next thing. So
I love that. Well, so my final question, this has been awesome. For the farmers and ranchers out there that might be looking for additional help, what advice would you have for them? Because you're saying that you have people come out here and help mentor, but do they also, I'm assuming they help with work and helping you on the ranch, right?
totally, yeah.
So I guess for the folks that might be looking for help too, what's some advice to where they could try to find more local people like that, to where it could turn into mentorship or just help as a whole?
I mean, the biggest thing is you have to get involved. So if you have, like, let's say you're in a rural area and you want to farm yourself, you have all of these organizations, whether it's the Elks or the Freemasons or the Kiwanis or the Lions Club or whatever. A lot of those organizations are a bunch of old farts, right? Because that was the last generation that truly embodied civic involvement, right? So as a young person, if you can approach any of those organizations, become a member, number one, they will be so excited that a young person is getting involved in that. But then that's proving to them that you're someone who is trustworthy and also available to help them on their operations. So that's a great way to get involved. The other thing too is you have to know all your neighbors. And that's the thing, like in the city, I can't believe how many people that I know in the city that don't even know who lives in the apartment next to them.
Or the house. That has changed a lot. I noticed growing up, everyone knew everyone down the street, but now in today's society, most people aren't outside, and there's no neighbor friendliness. Whenever I moved in, not a single one ever welcomed me, and I thought that was very strange, but that's just become the norm.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is it shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But it takes one person to be the change.
Absolutely.
So my deal is like, hey, my name is Jason Wrich. I bought the ranch next door. This is what we're looking at doing. Do you ever need help around your place? Or, hey, my name is Jason Wrich, and I'm interested in agriculture. Do you ever need help on your place? I mean, it's as simple as that. Because like before I bought a squeeze chute, you know, our cattle handling facility and all that stuff, I went around, drove around to every ranch that had a different brand of squeeze chute and said, hey, can I volunteer and help you work cattle so I can see how this squeeze chute works and what I like and don't like about it before I spent the $4,000 to buy one of my own.
Yeah.
Right? Because of course every manufacturer, theirs is the best for all of these reasons, right? So number one, they needed the help because it's a bunch of older guys and gals, right? So a young guy that's running up and down the alley and sorting cows and all of that stuff, and then being able to see like what were the hangups, what were the things that didn't quite work right, where were the bars, were they sticking out to where you'd bang your head into it, as you're walking back and forth by. And I made all of those connections with those ranchers as well. Right, so I was doing product research for myself.
Yeah.
I got some great exercise, and I got to meet, and I also see like how they worked cattle and how those different kinds of cattle reacted to humans and pressure and all of that stuff. And what I liked about how they handled cattle and things that I was like, oh my gosh, I would never do that, whatever, I didn't say that to them ever, but I'm just like, because some of them it's like the hot shot, the shocker is like it's like part of their arm.
Yeah.
Like everywhere they go, they have a hot shot, and I'm just like, we don't even own a hot shot on this property, right? And our cows are so tame. There's time I have to twist their tail to get them to move up the alley because they're just like, whatever, you know.
Yeah.
Luckily, I've trained our cow dogs that they'll come in and nip them on the foot to get them to move up. So that's another thing is like, just get out there.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, they could reach out to us on our website or on all the socials. We're on all social medias, and I try and respond to everything. Or they can come out and stay, and then in their reservation say, hey, we want to take a tour of your place. Because I love showing people around, like we show you guys around. But I also talk about like what's important to us and why it's important to us and why I think it's worth them looking into further for themselves. It's like my Bitcoin journey. Someone told me about it. I thought they were crazy. I went down the rabbit hole, and now I'm all in. It was the same thing with the regenerative ag.
Yeah.
Like we haven't used any pharmaceuticals in our cattle. This will be our 5th year. And our cattle are healthier for it, and the land is healthier for it as well. But approaching it the way that we did originally, because the vets are like, oh my God, you'll have a blackleg outbreak and all your calves will die. A miserable death. And it'll be your fault because you didn't vaccinate them. Or you'll get a respiratory infection and all of your calves will die, and it'll be your fault because you didn't vaccinate them. I mean, it's just like on and on and on and on and on and on. But they're trained by the pharmaceutical company who wrote the curriculum for their vet program. So I can't blame them. That's all they know.
Yeah.
And so when I say that, people are just like, oh my God, well, don't they all die? No, actually they don't. Our death loss is less now that we don't put needles in calves than they were when we vaccinated everything.
It's funny how that works with humans too. But this has been great. The end point of being the change you want to see. I want to end on that because for any of the listeners who have never supported an actual farm or ranch, have never gone to a farm or ranch, if you yourself have a family or want to eventually have a family, I implore you to be the change you want to see. Because if we want to have a food system like everyone talks online to where we want to have long term, to me that's never going to happen if you don't shake the hand that feeds you. So again, thank you for having me, Jason.
Thank you so much.
This is awesome.
Appreciate you.
We're good.
Welcome to the Regenaissance Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Griggs. Visit www.theregenaissance.co to learn more.